Hi everybody. I miss you all so much, and this is going to be very strange, so just be patient and kind with me because I am not a YouTuber. I've never done this before, and I don't know how to use anything, so no promises that this will be the best video, but I will learn and we'll get better together, okay? So what my plan is I think, as to not overwhelm anybody during the transition for now, I'm just going to alternate days between math and ELA. So today we're going to do a reading lesson, and then tomorrow we'll do a math lesson, reading lesson, math lesson, back and forth until something else comes up and I get a real plan from the school to see exactly what we should be doing during this time. So to start, we are going to start reading a book. I will read 2 chapters of this book to you today, and then probably 2 chapters at a time until the book is over. All right, making connections. There are 3 types of connections you can make as you're reading a book, and since we are reading a book that is about a 4th grade boy and his journey through school and with his family, I thought that this is a great place to start. So we're going to talk about making connections. There are 3 different types, like I said, but good readers stop and notice what they are reading reminds them of other things. So this will help you understand what's happening. You're going to make connections so that you can think about why this character might be doing or saying or thinking or feeling the way that they are based on your understanding of how life works. It's kind of like using your schema. All right, so we have text to text. This is when the book we're reading reminds you of another book that you've ever read or heard, or it could be something you read online. It doesn't have to be like a physical book. Then we have text to self. So this is when the book will relate to your personal life, which I think we're going to get a lot of with this book. Like I said, it's a 4th grade boy and his journey in school with his family, so it should be pretty relatable. And then we have text to world. There will be times in the book that it might not remind you of your own life, but will remind you of something that you heard of or saw in the news or learned before about the world. So there might be times that I stop and ask you to learn something about the world to make this type of connection, but I have a feeling that these ones, the text to self, are going to come pretty easily. In addition to that, we are going to keep a running vocabulary log. So as you can see, I picked 4 words for the 2 chapters I'm going to read today. We have the word looming, and this is a sentence that we'll come across. Shudder, trudged, determined. So on each of these sticky notes, I wrote down the sentence from the story where that word was used, and then I'm going to ask you all to try to define it, and then next time we do our ELA lesson, I'll go over the responses I get from you, and then we'll write our definitions down. Okay, so at this point, it's time to read. I'm gonna get comfortable in my chair. You guys can get comfortable too. I'm gonna read to you. I'll show you the pictures. They're gonna be a little bit backwards because I have it on selfie camera so I can see what's happening on the screen. Okay, so this is called Bobby the Brave Sometimes. You can see on the cover, there's a boy holding fish, and there's a little girl, and she's holding a garden gnome. Not sure what that's about. And it also looks like they're staring at a cat. I'll read you the back. It says there's nothing to be scared of. Maybe? Last month, Bobby got stuck to a tree, wore underwear in public, and faced a whole wolf pack of girls. What could be more scary or embarrassing than that? Oh, how about a new gym teacher named Mr. Wienerhouse, getting chased by a cat with 27 toes, dancing on stage in the class musical, playing football with his dad, a pro linebacker, or even worse, with his sister. He's sometimes brave, he's sometimes silly, he's frequently in trouble, and he's always fun to read about. He's Bobby. Okay, so we're going to read about Bobby. Bobby the Brave Sometimes. Chapter 1. He's not like you. Duck! Bobby Ellis Chan flung himself to the ground just in time. 1 second later, he could have been hit, or even killed, or at the very least, he might have lost an eye. There was no telling how fast that football was going. "Son, are you okay?" a deep voice boomed. As he rolled over and squinted up, Bobby could make out a giant silhouette looming over him. His dad was so big that he blocked the sun. Looming is going to be one of our vocabulary words. "Sorry about that," Annie said, rushing over and yanking her brother up off the ground. "But you walked right in front of us. That was dumb. Hey, are you okay? You look funny." "I'm fine," Bobby insisted. His leg was sore and he had scraped his elbow, but he didn't dare let Annie know he was her, or else she might call him a wimp. His big sister was brave and never complained when she was injured, like the time she broke her finger but refused to go to the doctor for 2 days. Annie put her helmet back on and tightened the strap. "Dad and I were just throwing spirals. You want to join us?" When Bobby hesitated, she teased him. "Come on, it won't kill you. Football's fun." Bobby pretended to think it over before saying, "No thanks, maybe some other time," which meant never. He picked up his skateboard and hobbled towards his mom and Casey. "Look," Casey cried, holding up something wiggly and slimy. "A baby snake! Bobby, say hello to Sneaky Snake Snake." "That's a worm," he pointed out. The worm looked distressed. "You better put it back." Casey pouted, "But I want to invite Wormy Worm Worm to a tea party. Princess Becky says it's nice to be nice to nature." Bobby's little sister adored the TV show Princess Becky's Planet so much that she wore her Princess Becky costume and crown every day. Let's stop and let you look at the picture. So there's Annie, Bobby, his dad. Mrs. Alice Chan set aside her basket of yellow and red zinnias. "Bobby, it looks like you're hurt," she said. "Let's get you cleaned up." As his mother bandaged him up inside the house, Bobby could hear his father's booming voice outside. "You've got a great arm, Annie. That last pass was perfect. You sure know how to make your father proud." Bobby winced. "I'm sorry," his mother said. "Did I put the bandage on too tight?" He shook his head. "It's nothing," he said. "I'm fine." Bobby trudged up to his room and stayed there for the rest of the morning. He had important things to do, like drawing pictures of friendly aliens and their pets, cleaning his fish tank, and peeling off the sparkly stickers Casey had stuck all over his skateboard helmet. Finally, he decided to head to Holly's house and see what she was up to. Maybe he could talk her into going rock hunting, or better yet, if he timed it right, maybe Holly would invite him to stay for lunch. Bobby was feeling a tad hungry, and Mrs. Harper, Holly's mother, made wonderful homemade bread and soup. She was the best cook. Everyone knew that. Bobby's mom was back in the garden studying her flower bed. "It needs something," Mrs. Alice Chan mused. "But what? Maybe a small fountain or a statue." Casey looked up with interest. "How about a castle?" she asked. "Or a moat. We should have a moat. Then we could get an alligator and a whale, and Wormy Worm Wood could go swimming." "Be gentle with that worm," Bobby said. He didn't know much about worms, but he did know a lot about his little sister and how excited she could get. "I am gentle, Bobby," Casey insisted. "Look, Wormy Worm Worm is hugging me." Sure enough, the worm had curled around Casey's finger. Bobby stepped onto his skateboard and pushed off. He breezed down the driveway and did an impressive ollie along the way, getting high in the air. The thought of a big bowl of Mrs. Harper's soup was making his stomach growl. Mrs. Alice Chan and Annie were laughing and talking as they did push-ups on the lawn. "That Bobby," he overheard his father say when he skateboarded past. "He is not like me." "That's for sure," Annie answered. Suddenly, Bobby wasn't hungry anymore. All right, to stop for a moment and make sure we understand what's going on, I want you to pause this video after I ask you the questions. Pause the video, and I want you to think about these two things, okay? So I'm going to turn the camera around and show you the questions, and then I'm going to ask you to go back and re-listen to the part of the book that I'm talking about. So pause. Ready? Let me turn the camera around. Okay, so I want you to go back to the part where Bobby's mom was putting bandages on him, and it says that he winced. I want to know, why did Bobby wince? What in the story made him wince? Was it from her putting the band-aids on too tight, or was there something else going on? And then on page 6, which is the last page that we just read, I want to know, why do you infer that Bobby lost his appetite? What do you think made him stop eating? What do you know about how you feel sometimes when you suddenly aren't hungry anymore? And what do you know that was going on in the story to maybe make Bobby not be hungry anymore, okay? So this is just going to be a little quick comprehension check. You can type your answers in the comments, or you can write them down and ask your parent to send me a picture, but I do want you to write down your answers to those two questions using evidence from the text. Evidence. Use evidence from the text, please, always. All right, so I'm going to read the next chapter 2, and then we'll go back to the connection chart. I'll show you the vocabulary words, and we will be done for the day. All right, chapter 2, the class musical. On Monday morning, Holly was waiting on her front porch. She leapt up when she saw Bobby. They high-fived with their right hands, high-fived with their left hands, stuck their thumbs in their ears, wiggled their fingers, and shouted, "Whoop, whoop, whoop." When they finished their super secret greeting, Bobby noticed that Holly had combed her hair again. It was a useless habit she picked up over the summer, and that was over a month ago. If that weren't bad enough, today Holly was wearing a pink dress. Bobby tried not to shudder. Not only did dresses make Holly look like a girl, but pink was his... Sorry, video cut out, ran out of storage. Let's try that again. Pink was his least favorite color. Bobby's most favorite color was cerulean, a darkest shade of blue. He loved saying cerulean. Cerulean, cerulean, cerulean. I really said it that many times. Bobby even had a cerulean paint chip from when he went to the hardware store with his dad once. Just the two of them. Afterward, they feasted on glazed buttermilk donuts at Benny's Donut Palace. That had been a great day. "Is that what you're wearing for the class picture?" Holly asked. "That's today?" Bobby had forgotten all about the class picture. Not that he would have dressed any differently. "What's wrong with my clothes?" Bobby sniffed his Troy Eagle skateboard t-shirt. He had about 100 Troy Eagle shirts. Well, if not 100, then at least 7, one for each day of the week. His shirt didn't smell too bad. Bobby's father was in charge of the laundry, which meant that it didn't always get done. Mrs. Ellis Chan worked at an office, while Mr. Ellis Chan stayed home and took care of Casey in the cooking and the cleaning. 3 years ago, when he was the star linebacker for the Los Angeles Earthquakes, a National Football League team, Mr. Ellis Chan could count on a football arena filled with cheering fans. These days, the only thing he could count on were laundry baskets filled with clothes to be washed. Still, he claimed to love being a stay-at-home dad, even if it was a lot harder than playing pro ball. "Never mind," Holly said as they walked towards school. "If you stand in the back when they take the photo, the wrinkles won't even show. So, what about the class musical? I can't wait to find out about it." When Bobby didn't respond, she asked, "Aren't you the least bit excited?" "Nope." Bobby shook his head. He stopped to pick up a small black rock and slipped it into his pocket. "Well, why not?" Holly asked. "It's going to be so fun. Singing, dancing, and embarrassing yourself in public were not Bobby's idea of fun. Fun would be painting the garage with his dad, or skateboarding, or rock collecting." Holly was still talking about the class musical when they neared the parting place. At Rancho Rosetta Elementary School, it was considered weird for 4th grade boys and girls to be friends. Not too long ago, this is where Bobby and Holly would have split up so no one would see them together. But they marched right past this parting place. Ever since Bobby and Holly ran against each other for student council representative, they were determined not to let what other people thought bother them. Well, not too much. As they approached Mr. Kirby, the ancient crossing guard, he slowly rose from his lawn chair and gave them the peace sign. Gently, Bobby and Holly helped him across the street. Then they ran to the playground, where Bobby joined the boys and Holly joined the girls. Mrs. Carlson was writing the date in cursive on the whiteboard. Bobby admired his teacher's handwriting. It was pretty and precise, like her. Mrs. Carlson looked especially nice for picture day and had a real flower pinned to her sweater. Bobby tugged on the collar of his shirt and noticed that it was crusty where some food had dried. Lots of the girls were wearing party clothes and had done complicated things to their hair. Bobby noticed that some of the boys didn't look normal either. Jackson's hair was plastered down and combed to the side, making him look like a dork. Chess, Bobby's other best friend besides Holly, was wearing a long-sleeved shirt and a tie. Bobby didn't even own a tie or a long-sleeved shirt, although he did own a pair of gold antique cufflinks that Gramps had given him. The morning flew by. In social studies, Mrs. Carlson talked about freedom of speech. We are lucky to be American citizens because we have the right to express ourselves. In some places, people can get sent to prison just for saying something that the government doesn't agree with. It's called oppression, when people are unjustly punished for speaking out, and those who do it are oppressors. Without warning, St. James stood on his chair and yelled, "I'm the king of everyone!" "Please step down, St. James," Mrs. Carlson said. She acted like she couldn't hear the entire class roaring with laughter. When he continued standing on his chair, Mrs. Carlson crossed her arms. "Now," she ordered, "or you will be sent to the principal's office." "I was just expressing myself," St. James muttered as he sat down. Jillian Zara and the rest of the girls glared at him. They would make good impressors, Bobby noted. "Now for something really fun," Mrs. Carlson announced. "As you know, every year my class puts on a musical. This year's show is Annie." "I have a connection." Bobby raised his hand. "Annie's my big sister's name," he said proudly. "It's a lovely name," Mrs. Carlson told him. When she smiled, Bobby felt good. Important, even. Mrs. Carlson went on to tell her students that Annie was about a spunky girl who lives with evil Miss Hannigan in an orphanage. During the show, Annie befriends a dog named Sandy and is later adopted by a rich man named Daddy Warbucks. In the Broadway musical, all the orphans are girls. However, in our Rancho Rosetta version, the show will be much shorter, plus our orphans will be boys and girls. Here's a sign-up sheet and a list of parts you can play. Write down your first, second, and third choices, Mrs. Carlson instructed. And remember, the show isn't about who's the best singer or dancer, it's about all of us having fun and working together. The room suddenly got loud as the sign-up sheet made its way around the class. Several girls wanted to be Little Orphan Annie, and lots of the boys wanted to be Daddy Warbucks. Bobby just sat on his hands and studied the crack in the ceiling. It looked like a spider with 5 legs. He didn't want to be in the musical at all, unless, of course, he got the only role worth playing. But with his luck, that was sure to go to someone else. Last year, for his 3rd grade play, Bobby was a tree. Not even one of the trees near the front of the stage. He was a back tree. "All right then," Miss Carlson said. "I'm going to review the list. If more than one person sign up for a particular role, I will draw names. After recess, I'll post the results. Remember, we'll be taking our class photo later this afternoon, so try not to get your clothes dirty." The boys raced to the handball courts while the girls gathered in clumps on the playground. Bobby lost his first 3 games, but won the 4th game against Chess when he hit a spectacular low ball. Handball wasn't nearly as dangerous as softball, basketball, or especially football. As far as he knew, no kid had ever been seriously injured playing handball. In football, players were always getting hurt. Bobby could remember going to his dad's LA Earthquakes game when he was little. Whenever his father was tackled, Bobby would hold his breath until he got up and waved to show he was okay. Later, as the class piled back into the room, everyone pushed forward to the bulletin board where Mrs. Carlson had posted the Annie assignments. "All right," St. James yelled, pumping his fists in the air. He was Daddy Warbucks. Chess and Jackson were orphans, and so was Jillian Czar. Holly was Miss Hannigan, and Swoozie, a girl who barely spoke, had the title role of Annie. Bobby scanned the list for his name, and when he saw it, he lit up. He got his first choice. Bobby would play Sandy the dog. All right, and that is where chapter 2 ends. I'll show you, there's just like one little picture. It's just a sign-up sheet. So, let's go back to our Making Connections chart. Okay, it is my hope that you will respond or comment or message me with a connection that you could make, and I will write them on a sticky note and stick it to our chart so that even though we're not together technically, I can still collect a class's thoughts and keep us together. So that kind of does feel like we're together. But I will make the first connection, and this is text to self, so book to our life. And you know, there's a lot with the teacher and the kids, and it's a 4th grade class, so I think it's all very relatable. But so that I don't steal anybody else's, I'm going to connect to the teacher. So I'm going to write my connection, and then I'll come back. So you can see that I started my connection with my name, and then I said, I connect to, and then I gave my idea. So I said, I connect to Miss Carlson when the student called out to be funny, and she had to pretend not to notice and ask him to get down. So for me, that was super relatable because, you know, we have a lot of class clowns that like to call out and say things that are honestly usually pretty funny, but because I'm teaching, it's not that funny. So instead of laughing with y'all, I have to be serious and say, get down now, or you're gonna go to the principal's office. So I connect to her in that. I want to know, what do you connect to? I'm sure somebody can connect to their life too. Maybe it's about football, or I thought the connection with Annie was really interesting. I did not realize that they did the same play that we did. But there's also one for text to world, and I want to write something down here and ask you to try to see if you and your parents could look into this one and tell me what you learned. So one moment, let me write this down. Okay, so it said that during social studies they were learning about oppression. So I'm wondering, what can you learn about oppression? Google it or ask your parents about a time in history or today where people were oppressed. Oppression is something that has happened a lot throughout history, and I know that your parents will probably be able to think of something, or definitely Google would. Before I really get into it, I'm just wondering what you could learn and come back to me with about oppression. And what do you think about oppression? Do you think it's right? Do you think it's wrong? If you were somebody who saw somebody being oppressed, how would you respond? What would you do? How could you handle that? So you can drop your comment. You could message me on Dojo. You could write it out and take a picture and send it to me. However you are able to get that answer to me, I will find it. And the last part of our lesson for today is going to be our vocabulary log. So I want to keep track of these important words to help us develop our vocabulary, since we're not in class together doing this every day. So the first word is looming. I'm going to ask that you define these words on your own and then find a way to get me your answers, and then we'll go over it. So looming, it said, as he rolled over and squinted up, Bobby could make out a giant silhouette looming over him. His dad was so big that he blocked the sun. So I want to know, what do you think looming means? Then we have shudder. If that were bad enough, today Holly was wearing a pink dress. Bobby tried not to shudder. What might shudder mean? Trudged. It's nothing. I'm fine. Bobby trudged up to his room and stayed there for the rest of the morning. What does trudged mean? And last is determined. Ever since Bobby and Holly ran against each other for student council representative, they were determined not to let what other people thought bother them. So what does determined mean? So, just to recap, we read chapters 1 and 2 of Bobby the Brave, sometimes, and we talked about different types of connections. So there's text to text, text to self, text to world, and also we asked 2 questions. So your assignment now, in reflection of the reading, is to define those 4 vocabulary words, which I'll write them down and post them. Make a connection to the story, any type of connection. look up what oppression is. And then I also want you to remember these 2 questions that I want you to write your answers down and submit. So I'll turn it back. Ready? Okay, these 2 questions. Why did Bobby wince? And why do you infer that Bobby lost his appetite? So I want you to do race responses to these. If you need to rehear a part of the story, just rewind the video and hop to it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. I don't know what it's going to turn out like. I still have to edit all these clips together. And this is literally my first YouTube video I've ever made. So be kind, but also you can give me feedback. Nothing rude, but I want to get better at this and I want to support you all. So if you have any ideas of how you wish this had been done differently, let me know. I'm here. I'm here to learn and grow together.